Ladies and gentlemen, the underquoting, overquoting, quoting dilemma that's going on with fair trading at the moment, it is all over the news, and we want to give you a perspective from real estate agents and auctioneers in the local industry about our opinion on what should and should not be getting done at the moment. Stay tuned. Oh, one of the best auctioneers in Australia, Gavin Reynolds. Thank you for coming on, you legend.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Lisa. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Gav. Thanks for coming on at such short notice. What a massive topic this is. I feel like everywhere I turn, every newspaper, every news channel, it's all over. It's everywhere at the moment, Gav. What's your take?
Yeah.
I think that, like all things, when it comes to whether they're newsworthy or not, if I can make an overarching statement in the first instance, that is that, as a business, we probably call, depending on the market, anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 auctions a year. And the industry is filled up with very hardworking agents of high integrity who only want the best for everybody in the transaction. And there are also some rotten apples that do the wrong thing. And it's much easier to write about those than it is about the people that are doing the right thing. But here we are talking about it. And it disappoints me a bit that the industry is being tarred with the brush that it is. But the underquoting, the bidding blind, I think it's been tagged as by the New South Wales government, is something that is absolutely on the tip of everybody's tongue, particularly in terms of the regulators at the moment. And I really think we need to share more information as an industry and really make some meaningful change to protect all the great people in the industry and better inform the consumer as well.
Yeah, well said, well said. And look, I think, there is definitely a bit of a general consensus out there. And, Gav, you're on the ground, you're the auctioneer, you're calling so many auctions, you're doing a lot around that whole Newcastle area. But I think there's a general consensus out there that all agents, and I'm speaking very generally here, but all agents do the wrong thing. And as you said, that is definitely not the case. There's a whole lot of agents that are working really hard. And our job at the end of the day is to represent the vendor and get the best possible price for the vendor. Yes. That's our job, Yes. And it's not done by underquoting. It's done by working hard and working out what is the best possible strategy. Sometimes it's an auction, sometimes it's private treaty, sometimes it's off market, sometimes it's pre-market, and sometimes the property has sold post-market. But what we can't control is what the property is going to sell for. That we can't control. I know myself, I've brought properties to market. And, I've had something on my agency agreement, and then it's been an extremely popular property. And, the property has sold for way over. We can't control what the market is going to do. We can't control that. But the big red hot topic of conversation at the moment is the whole underquoting. I know there's been a whole lot of agents that have had their names splashed right across the media. I just want to know, what is your take on the whole underquoting thing, in a nutshell?
I think to try and put it into a nutshell might be a very, very cramped nutshell. So I think that there are absolutely examples you could point to out there in the market where it's a clear case of underquoting, right? And I think the other challenge that we've got is that none of us understand all of the conversations. It'd be easy to make that assessment without understanding all of the detail that's gone into the lead up to any given auction. But I think that there are a couple of really important things that I think that possibly the buying community need to know about. There is, by way of the Property Stock and Business Agents Act and the subsequent regulations, there is a requirement for agents, if it becomes clear after a property is launched that it's going to sell for above the price guide, then there is a requirement for the guide to be shifted up. Mm. Now, we could point to cases where agents make the choice not to do that. And my personal opinion is that is absolutely the wrong choice, because I think we've all felt that sorrow for a buyer or buyers who have walked away absolutely heartbroken from an auction as a result of missing out, particularly when the property sold significantly above where they can afford to pay. So anything that we can do as an industry, because as you quite correctly said, Lisa, we don't control the outcome. We don't. So if there is a way that we can give those people a little bit more protection by way of sharing with them and updating them, like we do our clients that are the sellers, about the fact that the property is likely to sell for more than the guide price, I think that's a really healthy thing that the industry could adapt to and adopt in terms of the communication. Certainly the agents that I'm working with, I do recommend that. But as an industry, we are duty bound. Sorry, I've got a fighter jet flying over my place at the moment, so if it's a bit noisy, I apologise about that. The beauty of being in Newcastle.
They're coming for you. They're coming for you, Gav.
Hang on, it's fair trading. It's fair trading.
You've been underquoting?
They knew I was going to be talking about this. Okay, I'll get into my personal bomb shelter.
But hang on a sec, guys. I think also that there's to start from the top. This is the number one complaint fair trading has in New South Wales.
Yes,
is agents breaking buyers' hearts by telling them one price and it sells for another price.
Yes,
and that's where this has come from. And I've got it, and I think putting an agent's skull on the end of a spear and saying, "Ha ha ha, we got one." Yeah, you're not going to do this anymore. Yeah. I don't know if that's good for our industry. Or that's vilifying our industry. And I also think that there's a duty from fair trading to pull their finger out of their bum and go and get these guys that are getting complained about. And I don't think you have to actually burn their house down. I think you just got to give them a good lesson and say, guys, you can't do this. Because I know the amount of there are people in our area that I can guarantee you their last 50% of the sales were all underquoted, and they've been doing it for 5 years.
Well,
now they're the people that need to be slapped on the hand and say, boys, you aren't doing and boys and girls, you aren't doing the right thing. I think there's also a little bit of a responsibility there on behalf of the regulators to regulate, and I don't necessarily think this is the way to do it. I'm up for a huge fine. I think we're going in the right direction. We're seeing with vaping at the moment, what's happening there. I'm all up for that. But it's like, hang on a sec, you can do more.
But, I actually did something on my social media. It was about 4 weeks ago, and I actually talked about price guides. You'll be able to peel back. You'll see it on my social media pages there, because an agent had actually brought a property to market, of which there is quite a lot of supply of this sort of stock. And the guide was so ridiculously low. And I actually did a social media post on it, Gav, and I was saying, I don't understand why you're doing it. Obviously, it's just a bait tactic. And all you're going to do is just break people's hearts. And then a lot of these agents have even got the audacity, after they've had the low guides, to then go and scream down, down the streets and all over the neighborhood, record price. We had 150 buyers. We had 30 contracts out, and we sold it for a record price. Well, it's like, okay, but you actually had this ridiculously low guide to begin with, and that it's clearly just a bait tactic. Gav, I just want to say something that I said to you just before we came on air, and that is, in my opinion, there's a couple of not easy solutions, but maybe just solutions here. And one of those would be just put guides online. Number one. I know there's certain states in Australia where it's mandatory to have the guides live. That's number one. And I want to get your thoughts on that in just a second. And number two is have maybe an agency agreement on display.
So
what the opinion of value was on the actual agency agreement.
I think that one of the best questions a buyer can ask a real estate agent isn't, what do you think the guide is, or what do you think the property might ultimately sell for? The question I think that a buyer should be able to ask a real estate agent is, what did you tell the owner the property was worth when you were pitching to bring the property to market?
And can I just add, in addition to that, what were the comparable sales that you used to come to that opinion of value? Because is it that some real estate agents, and not all, because there's tons of awesome agents in our industry, but was it that real estate agent, when they were giving their opinion of value, actually gave one set of comparables, and when they brought the property to market, they gave another set of comparables that maybe weren't even comparable to begin with?
Big problem.
Is this the issue here, maybe?
Well, absolutely. So I think, and again, if to Mark's point about the regulator getting more involved, I think that I'm all for that. Throughout my career, which is now 20, 25 years or whatever it is, it's a spooky thought actually. I've had plenty of interactions with fair trading, and touch wood, we haven't received a fine or a penalty infringement notice yet. And I've always found, when you get the conversation going with them,
coming after this show, mate, they're coming for you.
I know. Fair trading. I want to work with you. Really, I do.
Thank you for everything that you do.
We do love you, fair trading. But again,
they're great.
I want to lay down a bit of cover fire for fair trading. They can only go out and police the regulations that they are provided by the lawmakers. Okay.
Well said.
So if you gave me a magic wand and said, okay, do 3 or 4 things that might fix this or make it better. Okay. Let's begin with the end in mind, and let's talk about the reason that it's an issue. It's an issue because a buyer goes out there and they pay for a pest inspection, they pay for a building inspection, they have a legal review done. All of those things cost money. They've probably spent anywhere between $1,000 and $3,000 doing those 3 things if they are pursuing a property. So from a regulation point of view, I want to protect the consumers, but I also want to encourage free and open competition, because if this gets too heavily regulated, then auctions will be gone and everything will be required to be listed at a price, and the buyer will just need to decide it's too much, it's too little, without the owners having the benefit of being able to get a clear and transparent way to assess what the market value of the property is over a 3 or 4 week period, right? So here are the changes that I'd make. And this is already law, I think, in the ACT and potentially other states.
Wow.
The owners must, when they bring the property to market, get a standardised pest and building inspection done that addresses all of the areas. That needs to be made available to every single purchaser that inquires on it. It's no different to the pool compliance certificates and the like. Make it law today that that's required, because that's going to take so much angst out of it. Then the contracts are fairly vanilla, right? There's not hugely offensive terms and conditions in there that are going to require 15 barristers to review them. So the maximum exposure any purchasers then got is any legal review of the contract, right? And we might even be able to provide some direction to the buyers around flexibility that can be offered in terms of reduced deposits, extended or reduced settlement periods, those sorts of things. Any of that flexibility should be stated in some sort of disclosure statement that is available to the buyers. Lisa, to touch on something that you said before, let's make all of the comparable sales that were issued to the sellers when the property was pitched during the appraisal process to the buyers. Same information going to both sides of the transaction. Now, given that all that an agent does, because they're not a valuer, is provide an opinion of their price, they can also attach an opinion to whether the comparable sale is superior or inferior to the subject property, the property that's going to market. And it's just literally, under my magic wand world, it would just be one word, superior or inferior, right? So that the buyer then gets a bit of direction and guidance around what that property might be and how that might be used as a point of reference.
Yeah.
The other thing that needs to happen is that in terms of the way that the guide is offered, there needs to be a clearer method of communication once it's clear that the guide needs to increase. So I think that needs to be an if this, then that kind of instruction from the regulator. So if you get an offer, then this is what it looks like. But here's my thing about offers. And I was talking to an agent that I've worked with for 20 years. And Kate, if you're watching this, hello. I was talking to her only today, and she called me and said, You've told me this 100 times and I didn't listen. We've got an auction coming up soon. I had an offer from a buyer during the campaign. I didn't get it on a contract, and it's completely destroyed my campaign because the offer was up here and the rest of the market's back down here, and the buyer has vanished, right?
Yeah.
So here's the other thing. Can I just finish this off? Here's the other thing that needs to be regulated. Fair trading, or the minister, the lawmakers need to say if an offer is going to be made on an auction, on a property that's going for auction, then it needs to be on a contract with a minimum of a 5% deposit and with the certificate that means that there's no cooling off period. If those things aren't there, it's not an offer.
Bona fide offer.
No, not well, you know, and listen, let me tell you, I've been on that side that other agent was on. I've been on that side. I was actually selling a property once it was out of area. It was in Waverton. It was a completely dilapidated semi. It was extremely hard to price up because there was nothing like it that compared. I was extremely clear about that to my vendors. We set a guide. Even the market was coming through. We had so many buyers come through there. And the market had no idea either. People were scratching their heads because it had to be knocked down, et cetera, et cetera. It was in a great area. Anyway, during my campaign, I get on an email through a realestate.com inquiry. All it was an amount. It was an offer. That was it. There was a dodgy email address. There was no mobile phone number and there was no name. So I went back and I said to my vendor, look, I'm advising you that this is a non-bona fide offer. I'd like you to understand and accept that you agree that that's a non-bona fide offer, because otherwise I had to amend my guide. And I said that one dodgy non-bona fide offer certainly doesn't make up the market when I'd had over 100 buyers come through in a couple of weeks. Anyway, it did end up going to fair trading, this one.
And that was the whole intention of that offer.
That was the whole intention.
On the merry-go-round with fair trading, and they did. And it cost tens of hours, 30
hours and hours and hours of paperwork, wasn't it, Mark? Like, you know, the interview process, it was excruciating. And I was like, really? Over someone who called himself, let's say, Joe Blow, with an email address that didn't exist and a mobile phone number that wasn't even there. And next minute it's like, no, that's the market. And, you know, are you underquoting was the question. And I was like, this is ridiculous.
My question
is hundreds of buyers come through.
My question to fair trading was it a bona fide complaint?
Yeah, that's right.
Did they give you the mobile number and email? Or were you able to contact them when they were like,
ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's exactly right. So, you know, that one offer in inverted commas, and my vendors, Gav, had even come back and said, correct, we accept that this is a non-bona fide offer. So then I turned around to my vendors and I said to them, could you please put in writing to me what your instruction is and how you would like offers to be presented to you in the lead up to auction, and what do you require? You know, and there's something there that needs to be considered, guys. Because there are agents out there that have been known to throw in these non-bona fide offers just to try and stitch up a campaign.
Or to derail it, because it completely derails it. If you've got to shift your guide by 20 or 30% because there's an offer that has got no substance to it, and the way I frame it is an offer without the consequence of a purchase is not an offer at all.
Well, thank you. But can I ask the question then, how does one offer make up the market? How?
It doesn't.
When you've had market feedback that could have been $500,000 less, where all the buyers are walking through a property going, needs way too much work, because we're always asking the question, well, where do you see value in this property? Regardless of whether you want to buy it or not, those buyers are the market. And if you draw a line in the sand and you're like, okay, well, 20 buyers came through and said it's about a 2.2, and then we had a non-bona fide offer that came through and said it was 2.5, why does that buyer make up the market? Why? You're going to say something, Mark.
Oh, look, I think we're going to tighten it up. The biggest complaint in the industry, again, I'll go back to what I said. The biggest complaint in the industry is agents breaking buyers' hearts due to what they're quoting. They think they're going to buy the property for. What are the 3 tips that you can give buyers and fair trading each So what would you say to the buyers that are being misled? And what would you say to fair trading in terms of the stuff they can bring in with it very quickly? In short, for Gavin, this is to you, and to Lisa,
giving
this is to you.
Giving good recent comparables. The great thing about our industry, and there's a million great things out there to buyers.
Get good comparisons.
Get good comparables. Look, the thing is that data, that information is readily available online. It is. You know, you can go online, and even if you don't know the area, you can go on these days onto realestate.com and Domain, and you can have a look what's around that vicinity that's been selling in a recent market. That is the most important thing in a recent market.
Number two message to a buyer with this quoting that we're talking about.
Number two message to a buyer would be, you know, it's not a bad question to ask about what is on your agency agreement, what opinion of value. I know it's a really, look, I must say, I don't love it when someone asks me that, but it's not a bad question to ask. And the agent can answer it however they see fit. That is a confidential document, however, and sometimes I will answer that. Number three is not just comparables, properties that are on the market, but properties that have recently sold. I want to draw down on the word recent. It is very important. We have been in a roller coaster market. You have too, Gav. We've been on a roller coaster market for the last couple of years. Looking at properties that have recently come on and recently sold is very important. Looking at stuff that compares to that property that might have sold 6 months ago, in my opinion, not comparable.
Gavin,
the market's changed.
Three messages to buyers you'd like to give in relation to these underquoting laws.
Ask the agent to keep you up to date if it becomes clear that the property is going to be sold above the guide. Agents are not the Terminator. They are not Freddy Krueger. They are people, very nice people, given that I've dealt with tens of thousands of them over my career. So they will want to be looking after you if they can prevent you from extreme disappointment. So just ask them. The world gives you back whatever you give it. So just be kind, communicate well, and ask to be kept informed about the way that the property might be advancing or how the campaign is going. Because can I just tell you also, you might walk through the first open home as a buyer and there are 40 people there and you think to yourself, there is no way I'm buying this place. It's going to sell for 10, 20, 50% above the guide. Then by week 3 or 4, you haven't been back there because you've already inspected it and they're getting 1s and 2s through, and there might be a much smaller buyer pool as the auction approaches. So if you're staying in contact with the agent, then they're going to be able to give you an idea about how the campaign is going. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request to make of them. The other thing that I would do is I would, if budget is a factor for you, then do focus on properties where the agents have already gone and done the runaround work in terms of getting the pest and building reports, because obviously that will drop your cost base in your pursuit of properties. Also, you can do your market research. Just to go back over a point that both Mark and Lisa have made, when the comparable sales are shared with you, just jump onto realestate.com, buy a very short-term subscription for the period that you're in the market to RP Data. Be out there turning yourself into a bit of a property expert in terms of analysing the data, and then you're going to get frequent updates about those very recent sales that are happening. Because if during the campaign the market can shift, something might happen during the time that the property's for sale, which shifts the property's value up or down 5 to 10%.
So, like a bad building report or a bad strata report.
Totally.
Totally. 3, Gav?
Well, that was 3.
Message to buyers. Okay, cool. Now, your love message to fair trading.
Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to say here. First of all, as real estate agents, we are being employed by our vendors to get the most amount of money out of the market. That is our job. We cannot control what a property sells for. We can control what happens with those price guides. That part I definitely agree with. But our job is to get the most amount of money out of the market for our vendors, you know, and sometimes it's well above expectations. We cannot control that. We simply cannot control that. I think, you know, there definitely needs to be some changes there for sure. I see these very low, very inaccurate price guides. I see them in our market from other agents. And it really does ruffle my feathers. I deal with some of those buyers that were heartbroken because they missed out. But more importantly, they never stood a chance because they were brought into those properties under false pretenses. So, I do believe there needs to be some regulation here. I do. Where I think it starts to get very silly is when we are questioned, like I was that time with that property that was out of area, because I did my job and I did it really, really well. And there was some silly person, probably, a real estate agent who missed out on the listing, that put this bogus offer in. And then, I was having to spend hours and hours and hours, weeks it was actually, of my time having to provide information for something that I just didn't do anything wrong. And I think that's where it gets silly. I really do. I think the fines are excessive that are coming through. I know we spoke about this briefly, Gav. I think it's circa $100,000 if you're caught. I think it's excessive. In many cases, as you mentioned, Gav, that is more than what any agent would earn on a campaign.
In a year. The average wage or average salary for a real estate agent is still under $100,000 a year.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely absurd. But I think, they're here and they mean business. And I think something needs to change. But there are plenty of great agents out there that are doing a damn fine job at getting phenomenal. Most. You said it yourself, Gav, that are doing a damn fine job. And, but I think this is for the ones out there that aren't doing the right thing.
Gavin, what's your love message to the regulators, Office of Fair Trading?
I love the mission that you're on, because I will support anything that tidies up the industry and makes it a better place to be for the buyers, for the sellers, but also for those incredibly hardworking individuals that go out there and go to battle for their clients every single week, week in, week out. Right? So there's this situation where I've already laid the three changes that I'd make out, which if we want to go back over, I'm more than happy to do that. We want to make it mandatory for pest and building reports to be done, because that's where the majority of the cost is for purchasers when they're doing their due diligence on a property, particularly first home buyers. And they're the ones that need the greatest amount of protection.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark?
Then that can be shared with all the buyers.
That can be shared with all the buyers. If a buyer then chooses to go and do an independent one themselves, that's absolutely their choice. But let's make it easier for people to participate, as opposed to the barriers to entry being too high because there's that cost there. Make it mandatory for the comparable sales that were given to the sellers during the appraisal process to be supplied to every single one of the buyers when they walk through the front door. If they choose to hand it back to the agent, like our fair trading forms, that's absolutely fine. But make sure that they are given that information, or that it's available during the open homes for people to take away, or put it in the realestate.com, domain.com, and on our individual real estate agency websites. Put it in the ad copy. Put it there. Have a section in there. It would be very easy to add. Very, very simple to add, right?
Can I also just add something?
Yeah.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If you're saying a really, really low guide on something and you're having a look at all the other properties that are on the market that compare with that one, and this one is really, really low, yeah, you need to be asking questions there.
Absolutely. And again, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So the individual, we touched on this already, the individual who's in pursuit of the property needs to take more responsibility for doing the market research and due diligence. And if I can just touch on one other thing, which isn't necessarily a message to fair trading, the amount of times when there's just been an out of this world kind of result as a result of the water being able to find its own level out there in the marketplace, and the buyers, kicking stones up the street as they walk away, saying underquoting. It blows my mind when the agent has gone out of their way to provide all of the comparable sales information. They've been transparent with the owners. I get the great privilege of talking to a lot of these owners and hearing about their journey on the way during the campaign, what the agent said to them at the start versus what they said to them at the end, how hard the agents worked, and then they get this fantastic result as a function of being able to create the perfect storm. And then, like you were, Lisa, they're dealing with fair trading for a month, being hauled over the coals, not sleeping at night, shortening their life as a result of just going out there and working their butts off. The agency agreement says the agent must use all reasonable endeavours to get the highest possible price for the client. It's there. We are committing to that when we enter an agency agreement with the client. And then we've got fair trading whipping us and the industry whipping us and the press whipping us for complying with our obligations.
There you go.
Yeah.
Why don't they just go for the head of the python? Why don't they just go to real estate? Why don't they just go to realestate.com and domain.com and tell them to do what you've just said? Tell REA there must be 3 mandatory comparisons. Tell REA you must insert a building inspection or it can't be loaded.
But that's when it goes to portal.
Once his stuff,
what if it's not on portal?
Most of it, but
even so, I mean,
I think they could I think there's a duty there to lean on REA and lean on Domain, the portals, to say, guys, we need you to help us clean it up as fair trading. And it'll save a shit.
But that has somewhat happened because there's one of the portals, I think it's REA actually, where if your back-end search is lower than your actual guide online, they will put something on there like a waiting guide. Don't quote me on that, but there is something along those lines there. So, you know, they're definitely starting to conform as well. Look, I think that, the moral to this story right here is it needed in the industry? Do we need to tidy things up? Absolutely. Do we need to tweak things, and wrap the ones over the knuckles that aren't doing the right thing a little bit harder? Yes, we do. Not at the detriment of affecting the great agents out there that are doing a wonderful, wonderful job. And there's plenty of them. So, listen, fair trading has got a hard job as well. There's a massive task force out that are there, and they're coming for, the agents and people in the industry that aren't doing the right thing. And I think that's a good idea. I do. Yep. I think it does need to be tidied up. I hear it time and time again from buyers when they've had their hearts broken. And, but it's just, we just don't want to take this too far. I think those fines are out of control. That's what I think.
But it's a knee-jerk reaction, right? It's a knee-jerk reaction to them wanting to be seen to be doing something, Lisa. Whereas and that's in part, I'm supportive of them doing something. I just think they're doing the wrong something.
Well, are they chasing political votes, or are they actually genuinely going to do something about this? Because if they got a lot of media about it, which is sensationalized, which people love. They're huge fines, which people love.
Yeah.
But get out there and go get these guys that are doing it, because I can tell you, out of the 180 agents in the Northern Beaches, the same guys doing those low guides have been doing it for 5 years. We see
the serial offenders out there for sure. We do.
Yeah, get them.
But listen, well done to the agents that are doing the right thing. Can I say this is not a job for the faint-hearted? The hours are massive. The level of devotion and dedication to the industry, our clients, our buyers, is relentless. It's relentless. Where it's from the minute you wake up until the minute you go to sleep, and no one's crying for the real estate agent. That's for sure. But there is a whole lot of us agents out there, and that includes you, Gav, as an auctioneer, that are really, really just working hard and just doing the best that we can. There's a big, hot, spicy topic of conversation, which we could go on and on and on about for weeks and maybe months and maybe years. But guys, hopefully this has helped some of you out there. Gav, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate your expert opinion and advice.
Thanks again.
Thanks guys.
Legend. See ya. Bye.